Good.
Awesome. Okay, great. So again, thank you all for joining. This is going to be a great session. No matter where you are in your career, this is an opportunity for you to learn about how you can be a better individual contributor. How can you make your way to leadership if that's what you want? How can you go outside of the SE organization and find your way over to being in product? What is that next major step that you have to take to get into the SE field if you haven't been in there yet? If this was normal times, we would be doing this in your city. We would be doing this in person. We would be growing a true network. We'd be growing with you and helping you along every step of the way. But unfortunately, we're not there yet, and we're going to get there. And that's what SENation is all about. So speaking of SENation, if you were not on our last session, SENY hosted an event where we introduced what SENation is. SENation is a global SE community, and we are very focused on one specific purpose: to cultivate premier networks of local SE communities. And let me emphasize that: local communities. We want city leaders to drive networking across their town. We want to build real relationships with business leaders. We want to understand the technology footprint in your area so you can use that to start and drive SE growth and understanding what's going on in your area. And SENation is going to be there every step of the way to help you with the best practices across from one city to another, help you understand how cities are getting started, build a logo for you, get some slides going, help build out your first event, understand truly what you can do for your community, so that way you can help and be helped along the way through your SE career. Obviously, we're not there yet, right? We're still in the webinar game. We're still in a position where we're hosting webinars and being very digital, but we're going to get there. And there's no time like the present to start thinking about how you're going to start hosting some of those in-person events. And we would love to make sure that your city is represented. So if you have ideas on how you can kind of get started, we would love to hear them. And in order to get started, you got to join the group. So if you have not done this yet, if this is your first time here, welcome. If you have not been able to join us, go to SENation.org right now. There's a one-click button, join our Slack channel. And once you join that Slack channel, we're going to have a ton of activity. There's a Slack channel specifically purposed for this event right now. So do that as we speak. And we would love to see you in that Slack channel. There's going to be some swag. We're going to get into that here in a second. So that way you can ask questions. We want to hear from you, and we want your voice to be heard as well. So as we talk about growth, let's welcome the SE ATX Austin. Austin is pretty much the new tech capital of the world, based on how often we hear about it. So we've invited Kevin. Kevin, can you go ahead and jump on and introduce yourself, introduce Austin? We'd love to hear a little bit more about it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nick. Thanks so much for having me, and thank you, SENation. So as Nick mentioned, my name is Kevin Cox, based here in Austin, Texas. We've seen Austin just continue to grow. I've been here for about 10 years, and it's almost a different city in the short time that I've been here. And so we're really excited to bring the SENation community to Austin, Texas. I was first informed of SE New York several years ago whenever I was expanding my team in New York, and I was looking for people. And folks like Shamil, who you'll hear from later on, were just so complimentary of what the SENY team was doing. And I was impressed with the platform that provided a voice and resources to professionals who candidly haven't seen enough love and support, the solutions architect, the sales engineer, that role. And so I'm super excited, like I said, to bring this to Austin. And now that so many of us are living and working remotely, it feels even more important to stay connected, to help each other grow. And that's what really motivated me to bring SENation to Austin. We have a lot of Texans represented on SENation already, so it just made sense to make it official. So please check out the SE ATX Austin channel. If you're based out of Texas, please join us, or if you're just interested, join us as well. And for those of us who are here based in Austin or Texas, we're still developing the ATX team. So if you want to contribute in any way, large or small, please DM myself, DM Marcel. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your ideas, because as Nick mentioned, this isn't about Marcel or myself. It's really about that community. It's about developing that community that supports each and every one of us. So, please reach out to us. Let's get involved. Super excited to be part of the SENation family. Thanks a lot, Nick.
We're thrilled. Thank you. We're thrilled to have you guys. We're thrilled to have a representation in Austin. It sounds like a call to action to the girl group here. Everyone, I would assume, knows some sort of an SE or tech seller or tech representation in Austin, Texas. Reach out to those folks and let's get them involved. And we'd love to hear more about them. So again, if this is your first time, we've always been able to have sponsors, and we can't do this without sponsorship. So I would love to introduce Navatic. They're going to be sponsoring this event today. There's going to be swag that we're going to be giving away, and we're thrilled to go through this journey and this partnership with Navatic. And Randy's on with us right now. And Randy, let's have you jump on and introduce yourself and Navatic.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Nick, and a big thank you to the whole SENation leadership team for the opportunity to be here today. It's very cool to sponsor the first event of the year, and it's cool to be a part of this quickly growing global nation community. My name is Randy Frank, and I'm a co-founder here at Navatic. So Navatic is a no-code solution for pre-sales professionals to build and share interactive click-through product demos. So the question we're really trying to help pre-sales and SE teams answer is, well, what happens after the demo? So I'm a former sales engineer, and when faced with this question, really I had a few options. I could share a sandbox, I could manage a lengthy trial period, or I could share static resources like a slide deck or screen recordings from a Zoom. But none of these really gave my buyer champion a quick and guided resource that they could spin up and quickly show at their team to get that crucial internal buy-in that we're all looking for every day. So our guided product tours and feature overviews are helping SE teams today share personalized and interactive leave behinds to excite your prospects and ultimately close more deals. So on the bottom of the screen here is a link to an example demo if you want to check us out. And I would love to share more information if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, email, or in the SENation Slack channel. But thank you all again, and really looking forward to the event today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Randy. This is great. Really appreciate your partnership. Really appreciate you being here. So what has Navatic done for us? They've been able to help sponsor us in getting some swag. And how are you going to get that swag? If you're going to go to SENation.org, you're going to sign up for our link, our Slack channel, and join the actual channel of February 23rd webinar. Everyone's going to be in that actively participating. And we're going to be giving away swag. We're going to ask some questions that you're going to populate. We're going to have the team monitoring that and taking a look at what questions are being asked. How many questions are being liked and commented on, and what kind of participation are we saying, and who's the most engaged audience member. And once we get some of those answers and some of those questions asked and answered, we'll announce our swag winners at the end of the session. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of the questions that you guys come up with. But before we get started here, I do want to introduce our panelists. I do want to thank them for being here. I want to thank them for their mentorship and their advice. We're going to hear some great stories from a great group of folks who have different backgrounds and different trajectories across the SaaS world. And this is a benefit to all of us to be able to understand how you can progress in your career as a leader, how you can progress it in your career as an individual contributor, and how can you take an SE knowledge and your SE experience and move it over to being in product. So I'd like to introduce Lexi, Shamil, and Samantha. So I'll stop sharing here now that I know how to do that. And I'm going to introduce the three of you. I'd love to learn a little bit about the three of you, and I know everybody else would. So if you could kind of just, we'll go through with Lexi, Shamil, and then Samantha first, and tell us about yourselves, how you got to where you are, how you got into the career field that you're in today, and a little fun question: if you were to do this in my role, if you were going to be a host of a panel, and you were going to have three guests, dead or alive, who would you pick and why? So Lexi, let's kick it off with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Lexi Bohonnon. I lead sales engineering at Yext. I am based in Denver, Colorado, and I've been at Yext for almost 7 years now. So I got into the SE role. Previously, I was at IBM in the consulting side of the business out of college. I learned a lot about technology. I studied sociology and philosophy in college. So you can imagine it was a crash course for me when I got to IBM. And after about 4 years there, I wanted to do something different. I wasn't really sure what that was though. And I had a friend from high school who was at Yext at the time. We were about 150 employees. And so I joined on the sales side. I was managing customers kind of in a blended account manager role. But based on my experience and a lot of my consulting work was focused on systems integration, I saw a lot of opportunity for us to do more of that enterprise architecture data mapping in the sales side. So I found myself getting pulled into these calls with AEs, and then ultimately said, I think we need an SE function. So I started the team back about 5 years ago, and we've grown and scaled ever since. So that's my personal story, how I got into it. And from a panel perspective, my three would be my grandmother, who is alive and lives down the street from me, but with my grandmother would be Roger Federer and Muhammad Ali.
Love it. Love it. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate it. Shamil, let's go on to you.
Awesome. So to get to my story, and hello first, Shamil Turner. I'm in technical product marketing for Dropbox. But to kind of get to my first SA job, it was probably in 1996 when my grandparents brought a gateway computer, and I kind of went over their place to kind of teach them how to use it. So as a young 12-year-old, I was dominating SA work back then. But no, in all seriousness, first gig out of school was as a system engineer for a healthcare system. It was great work being behind the scenes, and that's when I got introduced into the role of solutions architecture, sales engineers, because I was working with quite a number of them to implement products in the infrastructure that we had. Somehow, in like 2012, I took over SharePoint. And because I took over SharePoint for that healthcare system, I really got introduced into the Microsoft ecosystem, the partners there, and I ended up joining a partner as a sales engineer. Fast forward, I left that partner who got acquired last year to join Dropbox as an SA. Did some great work initially at Dropbox, and then moved on to Facebook for a year for the Workplace by Facebook product as a solutions architect, working and leading on the East Coast and New York team. I think I worked with Megan Lynn, who's on the call tonight. And then I decided to come back to Dropbox for an industry principal role without an industry, which is really weird. And that's when I found myself looking for the next challenge. And fortunately, I had built good enough relationships with different members throughout the organization in total, including EPD, that Dropbox was interested in keeping me on as a technical product marketer. And I found like there's massive synergies in that role, and I'll definitely talk about it later, but that's where I'm at today. As far as personal, in terms of who I'd love to like review as a panel, first one's Jon Favreau. Everything he does is awesome. The Mandalorian was absolutely my favorite series, but if you ever on Netflix, check out his chef show. Fantastic. If I can be kind of a Renaissance man and do it all, I would totally mirror his image. Plus I'm kind of big, so you know, we hang out. Michael Jordan, I just really want to know his opinion on the greats. If he can, you know, we saw the series, we kind of know, but I just want to talk to him about it. And then I kind of laughed when Lexi mentioned her grandmother. My grandfather, rest his soul, Richard Thomas Bridges. I just would love to talk to him about the man I am today, and tell him about the influence he gave me. So those would be my three.
Love it. Oh, that's great. Good for you. Great to meet you. Great to have you here. Thank you. Looking forward to learning more about you and about the trajectory that you've gotten on. Samantha, I'd love to hear from you.
Sure. Thanks, Nick. And hi, everyone. I'm Samantha Tran, and I'm one of our growth solutions engineering managers over at Twilio. So my journey actually started, I'll start with when I was a kid like Shamil did, which was actually my cousin actually started his own business, was a self-taught programmer, and started speaking to me in code at a super young age. So it was a little bit unusual, at least back in my day, for a woman to want to go into computer science, but I legitimately wanted to learn how to code. fast forward, and I landed my first job out of college in a consulting company where I was part developer and part working with customers, working with large e-commerce brands like Walmart, Rue La La, Bloomingdale's, and so on. So I really loved talking to customers. But then I landed a software engineering gig at Facebook back in the early days over there. So actually when Facebook was only 2,000 people, and got to have a very interesting cross-functional part of an engineering team. Even though I was a software engineer, I got to do a lot of other things. As the company grew, I found that I was a software engineer solely focused on the tasks in front of me, and something was missing, which is what led me into the SE path. Fast forward to today, or actually, I'll share my story prior to coming to Twilio too, which was when I was at Lyft. I started at Lyft 4 years ago, and I started the sales engineering team over there. So I actually started as the first technical person between the engineering team and the sales team. So there's an engineering team building the APIs over at Lyft for the first time, and the sales team selling some vision. So I was the first one to come in and piece that together and ultimately build the sales engineering team there. And now fast forward to today at Twilio. I've been at Twilio for about 9 months now. Something that I'm super proud of on my team is that the majority of my team is women, and I think that's really unique, which leads me to the panelists I would choose. So Ada Lovelace, Grace Hopper, and Katherine Johnson, they're all pioneers in computer science, and I'd love to pick their brains on what that was like, first of all, back then, but also get their thoughts on how to be resilient in this world of that is quite male dominated, but also what are their thoughts in involving technologies, assuming that they would have context on cloud computing and AI today.
I love it. I love it. Such a pertinent topic to today's world as well. And I think that, we're going down the right path, as delayed as it might be. I think it's going to be great. And I continue to see more and more stories like yours and stories like everyone's I've heard here so far. And that's a big part of why I got into SENation is there are no two stories that are the same when you talk to somebody about how they got into either technology or specifically in sales engineering, right? And it's such a fantastic background to be able to hear how people fell into it, as they often would say. But it's a great way to understand the thought process on somebody's decision making and how they kind of map out their career. So as we go through today, I kind of want to spend some time in each section, and the sections that I want to start out with was just like introducing the new year. I think that for the most part, the majority of the folks here on the call, we probably just started our sales kickoff, or maybe we're in the midst of that now. And there's a big difference between sales kickoff, February of this year, and probably what was your last trip of last year, right? And I guess, Lexi, if you want to kind of start off on your planning as an SVP of an organization and how you're kind of focused on building out trust to some people you might have never met, right? How do you get that same level of excitement that SKO and your kind of kickoff would typically get?
Yeah. So my team, for those of you who have heard me at some of these in the past, is very remote, and we are all in territory, and we were used to this culture of every 8 or so weeks getting together in person at an offsite, usually in one of our office locations around the country or the world. But that moved to like cool locations like Austin, where we didn't have an office yet, but all wanted to gather. And that obviously has shifted dramatically. So there's a ton of people on my team that I haven't met before. And so we've done a lot of things over the course of the last 6 or 9 months, like we all have. But I think something that I'm super proud of was RKO. We finished it a week and a half ago, and it was super lightweight. We had this whole long content block, multiple days, Zooms on end, built out. And about a week and a half before, the revenue exec team got together and we pulled the plug on most of it. And we were like, this is not going to be productive. And we're actually going to create frustration. And so rather than having these long content blocks, let's break it up, focus on celebrating the wins, focus on some of the really cool new product features, and then give people the opportunity to break out into small groups. And we had a motivational speaker come on. We talked a lot about the personal side of what we're all going through. So we gave people the opportunity to be vulnerable, talk about balance and what that means. Balance, I say like that. And it was so energizing. It was the best set of Zoom calls I've been on. And it was probably cumulative 5 hours, maybe across 4 days. So that had nothing to do really with SE programming. It was really revenue wide. And then what we're doing next week is doing a Zoom site for our global SE team. That'll be about a day where we're getting into the nitty gritty of a lot of the new stuff for product. So a little bit of a different approach. And I think it was the right call to pull that audible and slim down the content because people seem really energized and excited.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's a fine line to walk, right? When you're in meetings each and every day, and then you're jumping into what is supposed to be that pep rally of getting you started for the year. And then all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, I'm still just sitting here in my home office and I'm not going out to dinner and I'm not seeing people and not meeting new people. Obviously that can be hard for somebody who's relatively new to an organization. And I'd like to transition over to Samantha. I know you and I both have something in common here. You know, I recently started a role at Drift, and I'm now onboarding in my current role. You know, during the middle of the pandemic, right? I don't know when I'm going to meet anybody from this company in person. And you're at Twilio. I think, what didn't you start at the beginning of everything?
Yeah.
What's that experience been like for you?
That's right. So I started in the second onboarding class after Twilio went fully remote. The experience wasn't as different as I actually expected going into it. I do think remote onboarding is different, and I do have a lot of thoughts there just generally. But in terms of my own experience, I found that my team was really was going out of their way quite a bit to connect with me and get to know me, which I really valued. It can be a completely isolating experience onboarding remotely if you don't have your team by your side. You don't have the opportunity to walk up to someone's desk and ask them a question. Slack can feel intimidating, especially for some of my more junior folks on my team. I sort of have to coach them through asking questions over Slack. And so that's a thing. But for me, virtual onboarding, I thought was pretty well handled. I think it's the Zoom fatigue that can get you and maybe drown you amongst all the learning and absorbing and the fire hose of information. But I thought
absolutely
did a really good job of streamlining that. And we're really lucky too. We have a programs team at Twilio, shout out to Megan Lynn as well. And we have a really great, well thought out SE onboarding program, which I know is rare for many organizations, but that was helpful too, knowing how to focus and dial in on the SE role at Twilio too.
That's good. That's got to provide them with enough guidance, at least to get on the right path and kind of focus their energy on week to week to make sure that they're not trying to boil the ocean all at once, right? Very challenging task when you're jumping into a new set of software, a new technology, to be able to try to think that you're going to be demo ready and sitting in front of a customer as much as we would want to do that to speed ahead. How are you developing a relationship with your team, having potentially maybe never met them? Like, what are some of the things that you would be doing in this new year, maybe if they're new or if you just haven't met them? How are you developing that kind of a relationship when you might typically have done it in the office?
Yeah, great question. One thing I miss the most about being in person is just being able to go outside for a walk with that person, whether they're new or they've been with you for a while, just being able to change the dynamic. And that's really hard to do over Zoom. I spend the majority of the time getting to know my people first, and I care about them, but part of caring about them is actually going in deep and getting to really know them and understanding what drives them personally. And that part can't be rushed, honestly, because building trust takes time. It can take seconds to break, I think, but if you do it right and you take your time, then over time things will fall into place. Another part of it too is ensuring that I carve out time with my team to talk about them and their careers. So aside from getting to know them personally, I make it a priority with every single team member when they're new to get to know what drives them in their own career. Of course, they just joined my company and they're excited to be a part of this team, but what do they want in 5 years? And what is something piecemeal that I can carve out to help them get there step by step? Because I want to support their bigger journey rather than just being a part of my team specifically forever.
Absolutely. No, that's great. Yeah, getting to know people and making that extra effort as a leader to make sure that you understand what really drives them, what motivates them. And sometimes that's information that you would typically get, you know, over coffee or drink after work or something like that, where it's much more of an informal setting and people can let their guard down a little bit more. You can learn about that person and what really makes them tick. In this scenario, not necessarily the same, and you got to make a little extra effort as that leader. So appreciate you sharing that. And In this spirit of planning for that new year and planning the messaging around kickoffs, Shamil, walk me through what that go-to-market messaging looks like, because that's a huge part, if not the only reason, right, that kickoff actually exists, is what is that kind of pep rally going to look like, and how are we going to talk about that in a very, very driven way, with continuity, right, to make sure that everyone's saying the right message at the right time. Yeah. So would love to kind of get a little bit from your experience on your side from the product team. What are you doing to help coach your technical team and your sales team?
Absolutely. So the biggest thing is understanding that when there's a message built, it's very intentional. It's focused on a addressable market, whether a vertical or a specific company model. And when you're a salesperson or a sales engineer going after your target, you may not think about that original message, and you may think about, let me explain it in something that makes sense to me. And that's the biggest thing I try and bring to the build side PMMs, our core product marketing managers, for them to understand that when you're in sales, you have to adapt to the customer. You can't always just take the message that was built for the vertical or the addressable market. So you still have to start with something, and that's where we typically start. So when it comes to SKO, when it comes to the messaging, we'll start with working with the leadership, the executives, because the executives have a high level view of the goals of the organization or a specific line of business, but they'll never know the individual details of the sub portions of that product being built, the individual features. So the goal is to up level the conversation and work with the executives to build their overall messaging. You want to make it exciting. So we want to definitely have product speak directly to your SAs and the rest of the sales org. So it's very typical that we'll work with the GMs of whatever product line to kind of speak to the overall roadmap, the overall goal of the SKO, and make sure everyone knows what's coming in product. But the work is happening all throughout January and aligning, and sometimes the work's not even done yet. But to make it very exciting, we want to make sure that we think about pulling in tiger teams, that we called it, within Dropbox, but making sure we have multiple people contributing to that overall message before we actually bring it to the team. After that, we do have to kind of understand that it will be adjusted, and we need to consistently nurture and work with our sales organization to get the right feedback to build content the right way over time.
I love it. And you mentioned so many things. You in your role is such a collaborative role, right? You've got your fingers everywhere, from the sales team to the engineers to the leadership to sales enablement. Everything that you guys create needs to make sure that it's on brand. So what are the ways that you're doing that? Like, when you think about the end of this year, we might not be in an office again, right? And, I don't know about, every company seems to be a little bit different. Do you find that you've gotten to get into a rhythm now where you can work in such a collaborative world effectively? Or do you think that getting back into the office is really going to be beneficial to your role?
So I think being in New York and knowing that most of the product team is in San Francisco or Tel Aviv, remote is definitely the way that we're going to be moving forward. It's not for everybody. It really isn't. I know I'm personally excited to get in the office. I know it's not going to happen anytime soon. Reality. I found that a strategy to really, get rid of the Zoom fatigue is to think about communicating asynchronously. Really think about the purpose of the meeting. I kind of find myself, and if I'm talking about a personal matter or what happened that weekend and it takes up 15 minutes of the meeting, did it really need to be a meeting, right? If everyone gets 5 minutes to talk about, like, hey, what happened this weekend? It's great for connection, but then it adds to the fatigue. So it's really about focusing on asynchronous communication in this virtual world and making sure that you have well thought out ideas that you put out there, and then you get the right threading happening. We use Slack within Dropbox. So that's kind of what we do. We'll put a post to a specific channel. We'll have a great thread. And then if if we need to, we use paper to kind of bring it, paper is just like Google Docs or OneNote, to kind of bring it back into a well thought out conversation. And then at that point, if there needs to be a meeting, that's what we'll do. But that's kind of been a strategy: move to asynchronous comms as much as possible, and leave the meetings for kind of distribution of information, not ideation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think so many companies are doing this asynchronous learning, asynchronous communication, and it just gives so many resources, maybe even, you know, to a detriment to individual contributors to try to learn how to absorb that type of information. But also, it takes a new type of person and a new type of drive to make sure that you're going out there and finding the information, developing some thought around it, and then being able to ask questions to the right people, right? There's a lot more activity that goes around that. And same thing with activity. We saw this about a year ago when everything kind of kicked off, right? The hiring activity. So we're going to transition a little bit into hiring and career growth and thinking about where you guys have gone across your careers. Thinking about hiring, you know, about what, 16 months ago, we were in a position where most companies kind of stopped. They kind of stopped hiring and they just put everything on pause until they really tried to figure out what was going on in the future and at what point in time are they going to get people back on track. So I know we've probably all seen, maybe experienced that. Maybe we were all looking for a new job and we were ready, you know, we're ready to take that jump. And then all of a sudden we said, no, we're not going to do that. We're pretty happy where we're at. Or maybe you got unfortunately laid off and put in a position where you had to search. So let's talk a little bit about what's near and dear to my heart: having a mentor, making sure that you can have a mentor, understand what that mentor has done successfully in their career, and more importantly, what have they done unsuccessful and how did they learn from it so you can learn from it as well. I know it's helped me in my career and I try to pay it forward by being mentor as well. So Lexi, let me start with you. What have you seen as either having a mentor or being a mentor that has been, you know, pretty transformational in your career as well as someone else's?
I think so. On the side of having a mentor, I think that there's so many different values, and hopefully many of you have multiple different mentors, because you're not going to get the same out of every relationship. And for me, I would say the most impactful mentors I've had are the ones who aren't afraid to ask me the hard questions. The questions that you're like, oh, I know you're going to ask me that, and ask it time after time after time. And for me, that over the years has been, are you asking for more responsibility? Are you asking for more pay? The things that you're like, yeah, well, you always have a reason why you're maybe not doing that directly. So I've had a mentor that has been really kind of like up my butt about those things year after year. And in times when I was like, okay, stop asking me. This is our plan. We're good. And in other times when I needed that push. And I think it's really helpful to have someone outside of your family, your friends, and your work sphere that can ask you those questions from the outside. On the flip side, in mentoring, we have an awesome employee resource group at Yext for mentorship. And so I find I have new mentors every 6 months, and some of them stay along and some of them after 6 months, you know, rotate on. And I think that something that's been really important to me is helping in a similar way, paying back the asking the hard questions, but helping people to really understand what are the things that I enjoy and I'm good at, and what are the things that I don't enjoy and maybe I'm not as good at. And that is such a simple thing to say, but I find that it's really hard, especially earlier in your career. I know it was for me coming out of consulting, to say, what is it that I really want to do? And what do these roles mean? Yeah. And so whether those be SEs on my team, whether they be mentees of mine that are on other teams that are trying to figure out where they go from here. I think it's something that I take a lot of pride in, is leaning into those decisions of what am I going to invest in right now to help my growth because it's something I enjoy, versus leaning into a skill set that I don't really enjoy and I don't want to do more of that. And I have this phrase, ladders and leapfrogs in your career. And there are certain times to climb the ladder where it's structured, you know what you're going to get if you put in the time, but seeking those opportunities to leapfrog and either skip ahead or skip aside to something else, and weighing the decisions and the investments you make based on those opportunities. So,
Love it. Love it. Hashtag ladders and leapfrogs, everyone. This is terrific. And along that same note, Samantha, I'll come over to you on when you're thinking about ladders and leapfrogs. I always get asked from somebody who's doing very well, right? So how do I get to that next level? How do I go up that ladder, or how do I leapfrog? And I have to coach them into, well, what are the things, what are the skill sets they have? What do they want to have? What don't they have today that they can brush up on and maybe get some experience in? When you coach somebody about how to take their next step in their SE career, what are some of the things you're thinking about? In other words, what have you seen from an SE who has successfully kind of stepped outside of their job description and done so very well?
Yeah, for sure. So I want to speak on that on two levels. So one, first of all, I love when my team members come to me saying that they want to get to that next level, because they're putting the carrot in front of themselves. It's a lot more work on me as their manager when I have to dangle the carrot in front of them and see if they're even interested in wanting to get to that next level, because it's about motivation. Once they're motivated, then I dial into that essentially. And luckily at Twilio, we do have a couple of defined tools as managers to help us. And crafting out not only a career plan, but coaching our team members through how to get to that next level. So what I mean by that is there are core skills to a solutions engineer, and we measure our teams based on how they're doing in those different skill areas. And the approach that I like to take is I want my team to go through these frameworks and actually come to me with the top 3 areas that they think that they need to grow on, or where they would like to improve. And so the feedback is actually driven from within, and I help them reach those conclusions. Rather than when they come to me asking for a promotion, I don't want to be saying, well, you need to do one to get there, and also self-recognize how they're going to get there and discover that journey themselves. So that's one. But in terms of like helping folks get to that next level, so I actually have, I had someone on my team who was fairly unmotivated when I joined, which actually broke my heart a bit. And this person just was lost in the shuffle. It's a big company. They've grown very quickly. It happens. They transitioned managers, I think, a few times in the mix. And they weren't that excited about being at Twilio. And so it was the first time I think that this person has actually worked with a consistent manager who deeply cared and had that time. With that said, I was able to work with this person and find what really drove them, and also create a platform for them with that carrot in mind, which it took them a while for them to like come up with what they even wanted. They didn't know. They were so lost in the shuffle that they just didn't know where to even go from here. They didn't want to leave, but they didn't know that they wanted to grow. But as a manager, I created a platform for them and gave them an opportunity, gave them ownership, essentially. One of our core values is being an owner at Twilio. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people need a little bit more permission and something carved out to be an owner. So carving that out actually let them blossom, and they're doing really well now. So I'm super proud of that.
I love that. I love that. And I'm sure they're thankful of having your support and your mentorship to be able to coach them along that journey and being able to help uncover what they really want in the future. Sometimes we get so, bogged down by the day-to-day stuff and worrying about doing the next demo and not screwing something up that we just forget, like, there is a future, right? There's something out there that we need to make sure that we're going to strive for. And it's not about what happens in the next couple hours. Speaking of future and growing and making sure not everyone wants to be, go from an IC to a manager. That's not the normal progression. Heck, not everyone wants to stay in the SE community. And Shamil, over to you. Like, what have you seen about somebody? How do you suggest to folks in growing their career who want to remain as an IC and want to be able to lead, but without authority? How do you kind of see that? And what have you seen across your role? And then talk to me about how somebody in SE can get into product. I think that's a pretty important transition too.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is mastery, like really caring about your craft. So if you're a solution architect and you're aligned to a specific product feature, make sure that you become the go-to and the expert surrounding that not only the product, but a specific product feature. Think about all the partners, the competition that's out there, and really demonstrate mastery. But on top of that, to demonstrate mastery and bring all that knowledge surrounding a particular product, you have to understand the landscape, and you have to understand the intentions of the overall company for building and solving for that product. So you also want to start expanding your network into EPD. And EPD, product managers, product marketing managers are hungry to understand what challenges their customer faces. And SA and SE is the best conduit for that information. So if you're interested in kind of the other side of the house, instead of working with customers day in and day out, which I really, really miss, that's your opportunity to kind of start networking internal to your organization to understand what these other functions do. Now, in terms of the transition, or like how do you get there, and what are the correlations in terms of going from solutions architect to product? There's really a number of ways. I found mine in technical product marketing, which is really aligned not to the build phase of product where I'm trying to understand the problem that you're trying to solve. You're trying to understand the addressable market. You're trying to understand and do tons of research to work with the PM to kind of build a spec of how your organization is going to solve that problem. But this is taking all that and figure out how you're going to communicate this to a customer, these highly technical concepts in an easy way to understand where you can enable them. And every SA has done this. Like, raise your hand if they said, hey, we want to do a webinar next month, and no one from PMM or no marketing assets are given to you. And you're sitting there like, okay, up late at night thinking about what would be interesting to talk about. Like, that's exactly what you're doing. You're taking what you know about your product and you're messaging it in a certain way. If you've ever had to open up 6 of your competitors' products and like kind of understand the functionality, what they're solving for, and try and figure out how do you differentiate your product when you're communicating to your customer, that's technical product marketing. If you built a demo, when I build a demo environment, I build a demo environment to solve a problem for a vertical. An SA takes that and says, I'm going to use this to solve a problem for this customer, right? So you're taking that messaging and doing the same thing. That's technical product marketing. What you lose is that win from the customer, right? That's what you lose. We're still in sales when you're in SA and SE, so you still get excited and energized by that constant desire to win. And your win is when you find out that a team used the assets that you created to kind of convince the customer. That's the win on the technical product marketing side. So again, there's the big thing is start communicating, especially when you have expertise and then the superpower access to the customer. Start communicating cross-functionally within your organization to find out, hey, customer had great feedback about this one feature. Instead of logging it in Salesforce, please log in Salesforce or whatever CRM you're using. Reach out, say, hey, who owns this product? Hit up Slack, hit up Teams, hit up whatever you're using. Slack, right, Eric? And communicate and say, hey, listen, I have some really interesting feedback from a customer. Do you have 15 minutes to talk about it? You're bringing so much value with that interaction, because everything is being built off of research with some specific, people that raised their hand and said, yes, I'm going to talk to whatever researchers for an hour, right? Your customers don't have time like that. So this is real world that you can bring to the product team, and you're going to start building those relationships and understanding what they can do. So
love it. For everyone on the call, the fastest, some of the fastest career trajectory I've ever seen are the ones who have that give and take, that two-way communication as a consultant, as an advisor, from being in the field to their product team. Reach out to your product, learn what their problems are, learn what the messaging is that they need to be able to help solve, and you're going to be able to help them a lot more than you might think, and they're going to be able to help you as well. So if you're not already talking with product and branching out outside of the SE organization, this is an opportunity for you to grow your career and find a mentor that is not necessarily in the SE organization, because they're going to bring a different perspective. So love that information. And so Akshat, I think you're going to be jumping on here with a couple questions. I believe we got some from the group.
Yes. So the questions are asked in the in the order of number of likes they received, with 18 reactions on this one. Alex Boccio asks, on a scale of 1 to 11, how hard is your team going to rage once we get out of lockdown?
11.
At least 12.
All right.
Definitely 11.
Second question. Jose Espinoza asks, and this has 7 reactions to it. In your experience, what have been a few successful ways for SEs to bring back the voice of the customer to your product management and marketing teams?
I can share one thing that we implemented. It was pre-COVID, but we've relied on a lot more heavily in COVID, is we have a 6-week stakeholder meeting with our PMs. And so we consolidate, each SE is required to, on a 6-week basis, put in some trends or feedback from the field, whether it be around product requests, new things we're seeing in the space, what have you. And then we kind of categorize them based on the product areas and then walk through that with the PM team. So it gives them a really fresh look on, outside of like the little pop conversations that are coming up in specific deals, a good idea of trends that are happening. And it's been a really nice cadence to stay aligned on trends and things that they might not be hearing much about.
That's great. Thank you, Lexi. With 9 likes on this question, Eric Glick, our very own, he asks, what's been the best team building activity you have done with your team during COVID?
I can take this one. So we played a PG version, which my former boss wanted to kill me for, was Would You Rather. Totally HR safe. It was an online, a virtual version of it. So we were able to hang out on Zoom and answer these really, really hard questions together. But really what that did was we had 3 new folks join our team all at once. So there was a lot of new faces in the room and we needed an icebreaker. We needed a way for our team to talk. And our team is a little bit introverted too. And then the Zoom factor on top of that makes it a little bit harder to break the ice on our team. So it was a great way to just encourage conversation, get folks to think and talk, but most importantly, laughs. And I think that's the biggest difference between a work meeting and a casual fun meeting, is like finding opportunities for the team to laugh together, whatever it may be.
Anyone else wants to share what they did? Lexi, I know you had to say something.
Yeah, we've done a bunch of great things. We did a wine and cheese tasting from like 2 awesome spots in New York City near our office, our New York office. So it was fun to like get things from there and have them shipped to everybody. We did that around the holidays. We've done a bunch of, no surprise for those that know me, workout stuff. So we have a trainer on Mondays. And so anyone who wants to opt into that, we have this awesome app called Rise that helps you track your sleep debt and energy cycles. And we've had team building exercises around just like planning your day, leaning into when your energy peaks are high and low, and planning meetings around that, and planning when to, go take a walk or meditate or spend time with your family versus opt into really focusing on a meeting. So things a little less team building, but more like opting into the personal side of our own wellness has been really fun. And people have shared a lot and been pretty vulnerable, which has really helped the team.
Awesome. There's another question. Randy Frank from Nevada asks this. In a remote world, how do you maintain a strong relationship with AEs and account manager partners?
That's a very good question, Randy. I would say, I think that's been harder for my team, especially with new people and new AEs and new sales teams. And it's one thing to build culture and lean in to our own team, but it's another to build those relationships and build that trust between SEs and AEs that are new and have never met. So I think that there's a few things that we've done, but I would say we have not cracked the code. So things like setting up one-on-ones, inviting AE teams to SE meetings to do some of all the things that we shared. We recently opened up our trainer on Mondays to all of revenue, which has been fun to see different AEs pop in. We had a business psychologist actually do a bunch of sessions with revenue, and we had the AEs join us to talk about all the things we're all going through. So trying to like get to the root of the personal of what we're all going through. But I would say it's been pretty hard to build that trust, especially on the enterprise enterprise side, where those SEs and AEs are in person together on the road, and then meeting, getting a coffee, and going to a pitch together. Something else we've done is use recordings of demos and then share those with the AEs before to get their feedback. So if we can't align on time to do prep and it's overwhelming, giving them, recordings of new SEs so that they can listen in and get comfortable and give feedback. But I would love to hear others' ideas too.
I'd actually love to chime in. So when I joined Twilio, our team was actually operating in a pooled model. For those of you who are not familiar in the SE world, a pooled model is sort of like a ticketing system where the AE puts out a request for an SE to join a call. So naturally that is flawed, especially in a virtual world in terms of building relationships with your AE team. It worked before when we were in the office because those AEs sat right next to the SEs, but it was a way to mitigate sort of the chaos of a pretty high SE to AE ratio. With that said, we actually moved to an aligned model at the start of this year. And I think that actually helped a lot in terms of bridging relationships. It's not perfect yet. Still a lot of room to grow, like Lexi said, but something that helped a lot too was setting clear expectations with both the AEs and the SEs on how those relationships should look. So what I mean by that is, in addition to having one-on-ones and being a part of weekly forecast meetings, there's sort of a strategic element that's core to the role. And ultimately, in order for an AE to crave wanting to work with an SE, we need to drive value with those AEs and help them beyond just what's being asked of exactly on the deal. So one thing that even worked really well was one of our SEs actually walked through a role play with her AE on a webinar with our teams of what it looks like to have a strategic one-on-one with your AE and SE. And they even put together a one-on-one template. We have many folks who are new to their AE careers and SE careers. So that was just one example that showed them like what that proactive and strategic working relationship looks like, as opposed to just like catching up and talking about the calls for the week.
Yeah, I'll definitely contribute there as well, randomly. But sellers will follow where they see success. So exactly what you're saying, have those really, those sellers, AE and SA or SE, who have been successful, have them talk about how they coordinate their work, have them, go on weekly meetings and give access to their playbook, how they work. Because everybody's just trying to be successful and win, and just with the least path of resistance. Like, so share. It's better for you. It's better for your organization. And if you see success or a spike somewhere, copy it. Just grab it and say, hey, all of you guys do this, and don't be shy about it. The more you can get people talking, that also will help if you deal with attrition. For your really successful folks, because if they're successful, all these organizations want them. So.
Outstanding. Great questions from the audience and great questions from the group. Appreciate
Nick,
that
participation. Do we have
participation.
time for one more, Nick? Last one?
Yeah, let's do it. One more.
All right. So this question is asked by a new SE. She has a new SE job, Nicole from Brooklyn, New York. She asks best practices for building relationships with your team and org as a new hire and a brand new SE while ramping remotely. And similar to this, the same question was from Joe Mann, who's a manager at AWS. He also asked biggest challenge coming on as a new leader in a virtual environment and any recommendations. Thank you.
I can take it for the SE, and something I've seen from a lot of our new SEs is setting up random one-on-ones with folks outside of your either channel or team. And so I think that for a few of our new SEs, they took the lead on setting up meetings either with folks in other regions, other countries, other verticals. And it happened a little organically, which was awesome. And we decided it was so successful that we were instituting a monthly random one-on-one between our entire team. So matching up like a 30-minute call, no set agenda, talk about a deal, talk personal stuff, get to know each other, what have you. So taking that initiative to reach out, remote, it's hard. And it's whether it's on Slack, whether you're having an actual call, it's kind of awkward to be like, hey, can we have a call? But I think making that norm and whether it's the whole team buys in or you say, hey, I'm new here, I'm going to put time on your calendar, keep an eye out. That's been an awesome initiative I've seen work really, really well.
And just to also chime in on the same thing, that's exactly what I'm doing. You have that free pass as somebody who's new to say, I don't know what I'm talking about. I have questions. You can ask absolutely any question in the world. Nobody's going to judge you for it. And it gives you an opportunity and a reason to just set 15 minutes or 30 minutes on someone's calendar, introduce yourself. And if you don't necessarily know what they do, this is a chance for you to find out and build that network outside of your organization.
As a leader, something that's helped my team members bridge that relationship with their team a lot too is we actually have a formal buddy program now. So prior to COVID, we would assign a new hire to have an onboarding buddy, but it was sort of this informal thing. You can chat with them if you want to, but we've made that a lot more of an intentional program now and have set expectations with the buddy themselves. So it starts with feeling comfortable with at least one person and having your go-to, and that go-to I've seen them help the SC also branch out and bridge connections, encouraging them to reach out for one-on-ones as well. But mostly the buddy is there to proactively check in with the new SE every single day and see how things are going and see if they need help with anything else, because it can be really intimidating setting up that random Slack, Zoom meeting or messaging on Slack. So at least having like someone you can trust in the inner circle initially helps a lot with confidence.
Excellent. All right, let's see. I think that does it for the audience questions. I know we're wrapping up here. I'm going to ask 2 lightning round questions, and we're going to go through all 3 of you, and we'll go Lexi, Samantha, and then Shamil. But before we do that, I do want to thank the 3 of you. Thank you for your time, your advice, your experience, spending the time with us, and sharing your thoughts. It's been a great learning experience for myself to have these conversations. I now have you in my network, and I can't wait to continue to learn from all 3 of you. So I do appreciate that time. So 2 questions. I'm going to start with the first one. What is the most important quality an SE must have?
Authenticity.
All right.
I'll add a different one, self-starter for us.
Okay.
Curiosity, growth mindset.
Yeah.
Yes. Curiosity was mine as well. Awesome. I love it. What was either the last book you read or your favorite book that you would recommend?
Ooh. The favorite book that I'm looking at it right now. I'm going to show you guys on the screen. It's called How to Lead by David Rubenstein from the Carlyle Group. And it's a bunch of short snippets of leaders across all industries in government. So it's really easy to read and get through and pick up and put down at any point, but it's pretty cool to hear the personal interviews.
Great.
Mine's a bit old school. It's called Getting Things Done, or GTD. And it's really about establishing your system, your process as an SE to organize all the chaos and ensure that you're constantly ruthlessly prioritizing the highest impact things on your plate. Without getting your system in order, it's so easy for things to get lost and for that last customer follow-up to keep you up at night.
Perfect.
Promised Land. Like I'm reading for pleasure right now. So it's actually on Audible. And outside of the million articles I read every morning, I'm reading The Promised Land.
Love it. And I love Audible too, right? And it's,
oh yeah.
I was going to say my favorite book of all time is The Power of Habit. Must read if you've never read it.
Like it. Yes. The psychology. Febreze almost never existed because of that. You know, we learned that in that book. That was great. Mine, for anybody out there who wants to learn how to be a better salesperson as well as communicate better at even a barbecue, is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Outstanding book, written a long time ago, but extremely pertinent today and will be for the next 200 years. So with that, Akshat, I'm going to pass it back off to you. I believe we have some swag to give away. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, that's right. All right, so let me share my screen here. Perfect. So the best question asked, this has to be selected by the panelists. So can one of you pick the winner for what was the best question?
I don't know. I think Randy, we all responded. AE and SE relationship. That was the toughest one.
That was a great one.
Randy Frank, thank you for for your question, and thank you for paying for this T-shirt. And you're gonna get one of this yourself. So good luck. Congrats. Randy paid for these T-shirts. Thank you, Nevadic. And Randy, we're also gonna send you those stickers. All right. Most liked comment on our Slack channel goes to Alex Boccio. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. He had 18 different likes. So Alex, congratulations. And then the last one is most engaging Slack audience member. So our team has been internally looking at a lot of people who have been engaging. Thank you so much for that. There are 3 winners for this, not one, because we can't decide who to pick. So Doc, Bolje or Bolhe, Himanshu Gupta, and Nicole, please message me with your T-shirt sizes and shipping address, and you will get this along with SENation stickers. Congratulations to all the winners. And with that, we want to tell you guys that we are going to be back in April. The focus really is to get back to in-person events, but in a safe manner in every city. We have Austin now. I'm sure Kevin wants to arrange or organize for something. Sydney, we're already looking at an in-person meetup pretty soon. New York, for sure, we're going to have one. And until then, maybe April, we come back with another webinar. With that, thank you, Lexi. Thank you, Shamil. And thank you, Samantha. Thank you, Nick, for hosting. Thank you, everyone, for listening and tuning in. That's all from us. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.